Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.com. Welcome to the 231st episode of the Longbox Review comic book podcast. And this is my favorite comics of 2022. Last year, I did a top 5 in the Spotlight episode that came out in February of 2022, about a year ago as I record this. This year, I chose to go back to what I would normally do for my favorite comics. And I chose 10 of my favorites to talk about, along with some honorable mentions. I also had asked some folks on social media for their favorites, and I got some top 10s, some top 5s, and I'll be sharing those throughout the episode. But let's just get right to it, shall we? Let's start with some numbers. Why? Because I like numbers. I like part of comic book collecting to me is, how many comics did I read? How many comics did I buy? That kind of stuff. So if you're curious, if not, I guess you could just skip ahead. But anyway, I purchased 254 print comic books and 166 digital comic books. So of the print, 149 came from my DCBS orders. 85 I ordered from mycomicshop.com, back issues that I wanted to get. And I got 20 trade collections or graphic novels from In Stock Trades. As far as the digital comics, many of them were duplicates of previous purchases, both digitally and in print. But I did buy, 3 bundles. The first was The Leading Ladies of Image, and then the 25 years of Oni Press, and then finally the Image 30th anniversary, the 2010s, and that was my most recent purchase. Of the comics I read in 2022, there were 615, of which 150 were digital comics. So, I'm reading more digital stuff, mostly because of the DC and Marvel apps, and then also for stuff that I had in those bundles, and then other purchases on Comixology and from Kindle before they even became one and the same. And at the time of this recording, I have even been subscribed to the free, for now, Comixology Unlimited. I was testing that out, and that started before the whole big layoff at Comixology. Thanks a lot, Amazon. So I don't even know if I'll continue with the Comixology Unlimited subscription. So I guess we'll see. Anyway, that 615 comics that I read, compare that to last year, that was 510 issues. And all of this counts. I'm counting issues that are collected in the trades that I'm reading as well. So 615 versus 510. So that was all. The 615 was all part of the 2022 My 500 comic goal. So obviously past that, but not by much. I know some people I was following on Twitter, they were far beyond that, like double or more of that. I'm like, I don't know how you have the time to read all those comics. Anyway, so those are the numbers for me. Wait. I'm sorry. There are a few more numbers here. I wanted to talk a bit about the state of the podcast. So at the time that I'm recording this, which is very late January, so this episode will come out in early February, depending on when or how long it takes me to edit this. I have not released an episode since late December, and that was a Legion Project episode with Peter, and he did all the work. So I actually haven't done an episode that I've recorded and edited myself since, I think, early to mid-December, which was the Christmas Gab Bag with George from Meanwhile at the Podcast. Hey, this is Eric from the future, or later Eric, whichever you prefer. Anyway, that stuff I just said about the episode, the last episode in 2022, did not account for the fact that I had the following day recorded an episode of Center Seat, and that has already been released. So that was really recorded after I recorded my favorites of 2022, but released before this episode. So please keep that in mind. Thanks. So counting up all the episodes from 2022, I believe, and I say believe because you don't know how many times I've counted, like when going back to the 615 comics I read, how many times I counted the comics every month for each month, and I would get a different result. So my counting abilities apparently are lacking. But anyway, if I counted correctly, I released 38 episodes, with one bonus episode that I released in January. So just over a year ago, as I record this, a recording of Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech to commemorate his birthday. So, that's not bad for me. That on average, that's about 3 a month. And then in July, I actually released 6 episodes. So I knew I was going on or doing some summer vacations, and so I wanted to have a few extra in the queue, and I released a few of those in July because of that reason. Anyway, I had 9 Spotlight episodes, 9 pull list reviews. I'm going to talk about that in a second. 6 other comics-related episodes, 7 the Legion Project episodes, with 4 Tales of the Legion Project podcast episodes, 2 The Gutters, which, normally I try to do those like quarterly at least, but yeah, I just wasn't feeling it after that second one. I think that was in March of last year. So that was a long time between the Gutters episodes. I'll circle back to that in a second as well. And then only abysmally 1 Center Seat and 1 Star Trek related podcast episode. I probably shouldn't have done the whole Center Seat thing after all, because my plan was to do a lot more stuff relating to Star Trek, and it still is actually, but not doing a very good job at that. Maybe I should just stick to comics? You tell me. I don't know. Anyway, so the last 2 years have had some changes in the show's format. I changed Pull List Review in 2021 to a comic chat. I called them a comic chat that included reviews plus news and previews, because I thought doing so would be an easy way to get comic-related material easily enough to you, and segregate the Pull List reviews. And then I segregated the Pull List reviews as their own show. So I would get 2 comic book-related episodes a month, and then add on the Legion Project, the Gutters, or Center Seat every once in a while. And then that even morphed into what I started calling Spotlight episodes, highlighting news, previews, and at first creators, because I didn't feel like comic chat was a good description of what those episodes were. And then at the very end there, at the end of the summer, I think it was, I decided to break those out into their own episodes each, so as to be able to record like a news episode and then a previews episode and then like a creator spotlight or something, and do shorter episodes, be able to edit them more quickly and get them out more quickly. Unfortunately, that did not work very well. I only managed to do that spotlight breakout once before the summer ended. And then, as the latter half of 2022 went on, I got behind more and more on the Pull List reviews, in part because I had, in the summer last year, I had foot surgery. We had family vacations and other trips, and then the holidays. And I was dealing with something in, if you've ever listened to my Gutters episode about a year ago that I released this, called I Hate December, you know why December is a tough month for me. And there was this last December was the anniversary of something that I talked about in that episode, and I was having a bit of a rough time with that, and also the other things that normally I have to deal with in December of a personal nature, and I was just having a hard time, which is so weird, because the older I'm getting, the more, and I was talking to my wife about this, the more problematic that stuff is becoming for me. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyway, so all of that, I got behind dealing with the December stuff. I started feeling discouraged about the podcast because I wasn't keeping up, because I wasn't doing all that I wanted to do. I had plans in 2022 that I didn't even get to. I started something. I did the Totally Awesome Week of Comics. I got one episode out. That was supposed to be multiple episodes during the year. I started something also called One Hit Wonders. I was supposed to do more. Anyway, there are other things that I have been planning on doing for a long time, and as I do every year towards the end of the year and at the beginning of the next year, I do this. I'm looking back and I'm looking forward and just trying to decide, what it is I want to do and how I want to do things. And but like I said, I was getting discouraged, and at the end of December, I was almost ready to just hang up the mic. Of course, I would continue to do the Legion Project with Peter, and I'm sure I would do certain things at certain times, depending on what it is. When the bug hit me, but I was almost deciding I'm not going to do regular episodes anymore. But I kept coming back to those ideas, like the Totally Awesome Week of Comics, One Hit Wonders, the what was going to be originally the Spotlight episodes, which was I would spotlight certain either runs or characters, my favorite comics, basically, things that I have been wanting to do since I even started, even before the podcast, actually, which is why I started the Longbox Review website. And so, it took me a while. I even posted that out on Twitter, I think it was. And someone, I forget now who, I'm sorry if you're listening, but they encouraged me to talk about this, what I was going through thinking about the podcast on a Gutters episode. But I decided to do it here, because it's, like I said, it's a look back, it's a look forward. And so there you go. So what have I decided? I am not hanging up the mic, but I'm not going to be doing unless there's some special thing. I'm not going to be doing no more preview spotlights, no more news episodes. Probably won't be spotlighting creators unless, again, something special, somebody special or whatever, or an opportunity comes up that I just can't pass up. So what am I going to do? I haven't really decided yet, actually, if I'm going to continue to do pull list reviews like I have been, even though I have been still cataloging all the comics I've read in January of 2023. But I'll tell you what, just as an aside, I've been enjoying just reading and not feeling like, oh, I gotta save this, or I gotta take notes on this. Maybe I shouldn't read so much so I can cover it in a pull list review episode. I'm not worried about that. I'm just reading, and maybe even rediscovering a little bit my love of comic books in that way. So I am going to do spotlight episodes, but I'm going to, like I said earlier, I'm actually going to start like I intended for the website and then later the podcast, where I'm going to focus on certain things, certain comic books that I haven't done yet, or I've put off, or whatever. Just things that I personally wanted to get to, as opposed to talking about like the latest and greatest comics that are coming out. I still probably will do that. But given that I get a shipment once a month from DCBS, and I'm not, by the time I get to some of these things, you guys it's been 4 to 6 months since they've come out in single issue format, because I mostly now read stuff in trades with about a half a dozen or so exceptions from DC Comics, actually. So I will be doing that. I still want to get back to doing the Totally Awesome Week of Comics. I did that first episode. It was so much fun. And I have some ideas for some other folks to join me. The One Hit Wonders things, like I said, and we'll see where things go. Plus, I want to do more Center Seat episodes and talk about my my first love, my first pop culture love, which was Star Trek. So, and who knows about the Gutters? I'm not entirely sure of that. Although I do want to talk about some movies that non-comic book, non-superhero related movies that I've watched in the last, 6 months or so that I just have a hankering to talk about. So maybe that's what I'll do. Anyway, so still lots of plans. I still want to do this. I still enjoy this. But I'm going to shake things up a little bit. And, this is the plan. Plans change. And I may, decide to do something different as I get into this. Well, it's a bit of discovery, self-discovery on my part. And I hope you will join me for that, for the upcoming episodes, for the future. And but first, I need to put 2022 to bed. So let's move onward with my favorites of 2022. All right, just a few more numbers, if you don't mind. So out of the publishers, I wanted to give you some numbers here. So DC is the top. No surprise there for me, and maybe for some of you who have been listening for a while. But of the publishers, I read 253 comic books from that publisher, which is up by about 100, a little more than 100 from last year. Image is number 2 at 135, which was curiously down by just 8, and Marvel at 128, up by 75, and a lot of that has to do with my subscription to Marvel Unlimited. I did read several issues of Iron Man. I'll get to that. And then the rest of the books were from about almost 20 other publishers. And so that's about an average of about 5 comics a piece. Some were 1 or 2, some were, a little more than 5, so it just depends. So that's the numbers as it falls out by publisher. So what constitutes my favorite comic books of 2022? So primarily, when I was thinking about this, I was like, okay, what stayed with me throughout the year? Because some of these books I'm going to talk about actually came out in 2021, but I didn't read them until 2022. So, there you go. This is why I say it's my favorites of 2022, not like the best of 2022. For stuff that came out in 2022. It's not that. It's what did I read in 2022 that stayed with me, had some sort of impact, whether emotional or artistic, because there's a couple of those on here. Basically, what gave me joy in some way, and or had me counting the days until I could read the next issue or collection. There's some of those on here too. So before we get to the books, the top 10 books that I've chosen as my favorite, I wanted to start with the feedback that I solicited on social media. And first up is this actually was from Hive Social. This was an Englishman in San Diego who has a podcast. You should definitely check that out. And he said, if Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, The Human Target, and Love Everlasting aren't in there, I'll be stunned. With a big smiley face there. So I don't know if Mr. An Englishman in San Diego listens to this show, or if was he paying attention to my social media posts, or is he just commenting on how good those particular books are? I'm thinking it's the third option, but I guess we shall see, shall we? Shan't we? All right, so. Since DC was top of the list, I guess, in terms of number of publishers, although I just realized I'm looking at my list here and I did not put it in that order. But I'm going to start with DC anyway. And first up, some of one of the first one, and this is not in any particular order. This is not like 1 through 10 or 10 counting down to the number 1. These are just my favorites, and I've already talked about many of these. Which is why last year I did a top 5, because all of my top 5s I'd already talked about in previous episodes. But because I wanted to do all the state of the podcast and just kind of talk about this stuff. And there were, looking back at all the books that I read, there were more books that I was excited about, I think, than the previous year. So that's why I have a top 10 this year. And so that's why we're doing this as its own standalone episode. But I did talk about some of these in previous episodes, and I will mention that. And so some of these books that I'm going to mention will be real brief because I already talked about them. And if you're curious, you can, and you didn't happen to listen to those episodes, you can certainly go back and listen to them to get more details. But first up on my list, I put this in alphabetical order of the books. So first up is Batman, Superman, World's Finest. And so again, hopefully my data is correct. I read issues 1 through 9 this year. And I talked about some of these issues, the first 2 issues, it looks like, on episodes 220 and 225. They're both pull list reviews, one for April and one for May. But I have made, besides talking about those first 2 issues, I've made several comments on social media about the other issues in this 9-issue run so far. I, all caps, love this book. It's Silver Age fun with a modern sensibility about the partnership and most importantly, the friendship between Superman and Batman and Robin. It's the world's finest, the old DC Silver Age comic focused on Batman and Superman's partnership and friendship, but Robin was always there. But you never really got the sense that he was that he was a partner, that it was a triangular partnership, if you will. It was always Superman and Batman, and Robin. What I love about this, and I'm going to give Mark Waid the credit. I don't know. But Robin is an integral part to this partnership. It's not just Batman and Robin. It's Superman, Batman, and Robin. And I love that. Plus, I think Waid just gets these versions of these characters so well. I mean, he's such a good writer. I was very pleased to see him back at DC Comics doing this book. And not only Waid, but Dan Mora, oh my God, is just drawing the hell out of these characters and not just the 3 of them, not just the trinity of this book, but we get the Doom Patrol, we get Supergirl, the new character Boy Thunder, and the Teen Titans, which, oh my God, it's so good. This book is like Brave and the Bold and DC Comics Presents and World's Finest all wrapped up in this beautifully drawn package. And I want DC to do more books like this. Not necessarily in continuity, evoking a certain era or an idea of an era about these characters. And basically, I just want Dan Mora to draw them all because he's so good. He did a couple variant covers. One was one from the Batgirl series, and then the other was Nightwing. But it had Robin and Batgirl. I think that was the Batgirl's cover. And then the Nightwing cover was Nightwing and Batgirl. And he did both. And in one of them, I think it was the Batgirl's cover where Batgirl is more prominent. Obviously, that makes sense because it's a Batgirl's comic. And then in Nightwing, it was reversed, right? And there was some controversy online about, because I think the Nightwing one we saw first. I don't know. I wasn't really following it, other than I know that there was some complaint about, Batgirl's in the background. She's a secondary, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I had to get both of those because I love the way Dan Mora draws Robin in particular. He draws everybody just wonderfully. But I have been getting any and all covers featuring Dan Mora drawing Robin. So, because, Robin's one of my very favorite superhero characters. Anyway, okay, so there you go. That's Batman, Superman, and Robin, World's Finest. Next up, Human Target, also 1 through 9. I have talked about this. I think I briefly discussed the first 6 issues in episodes 217 and 220. Again, pull list reviews for March and April, respectively. And I talked about the first six issues because I was stupidly, at that time, waiting for the collection. again, like I said, I'm reading more stuff in trade collections or graphic novels as opposed to single issues. But then I was, other people I know, my friend Travis, Damien, others online, social media, people posting images from these issues, and the book just looked beautiful. It's written by Tom King, but more importantly, it is Greg Smallwood's work. The art and design that he has brought to this comic is just, for lack of a better word, just delicious. Delicious. Anyway, so I decided, and I talked about this in one of those pull list review episodes, I went out and bought all of the first 4 issues, and then by that time I had pre-ordered 5 and 6. Anyway, and then when I got 5 and 6, I read them all. This is probably my favorite of the Tom King written non-Batman books. Spoiler alert, I'm loving his and Phil Hester's Gotham Year One about as much as I'm enjoying Human Target. So that should tell you something. If you're like Gotham City Year One, I don't care about Gotham City. I don't care about Bat books. You're missing out. Phil Hester has just drawn the crap out of that, and it's just so much fun. Anyway, all right, back to 2022 books. Like I said, a huge part of the appreciation of this book is Greg Smallwood's art and design. It looks like the 1960s through a modern DCU lens. So I can kind of, from an aesthetics standpoint, I can kind of make a connection between the World's Finest book and this one. Obviously, different characters, different approaches and whatnot. But I don't know. There's this nostalgic callback that they're both doing that in various ways, different ways, but I love them both. It's just gorgeous. I really hope that this book sticks the landing, but I kind of think it will. And I'm probably going to end up picking up the hardcover collection of this as well. Okay, I have a couple recommendations from social media. This first one is from Sergeant America on Twitter. Hey, Sarge. He gave me his top 10 comics that he read this year. And here we go. He listed them 1 through 10. Manifest Destiny, Adventure Man, Hellcop, which I'm not sure that I know about that one. Spider-Punk, Nice House on the Lake, Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, Human Target, Dark Age, which I'm not sure that I know that one either. Scumbag, also that one, and Strange Academy. And I think, Sergeant, you and I we've exchanged a few words about Strange Academy, and that's something that I need to get to. It's on my Marvel Unlimited list to read, so I will get to that in 2023, and maybe we can talk about it. Anyway, so that's his. Manifest Destiny is something that I've been reading off and on. I have all but the last volume, but I'm several volumes behind, so I need to get back to that. Anyway, so we have a few, Human Targets both on our list. There's actually one other thing on here, but I'll talk about that later. And okay, so next also I have, this is from on Mastodon, because I'm now, I have been since 2017. But I've been primarily focused on posting things to Mastodon, and you can join me there if you'd like, because Twitter is, I don't know, who knows. But anyway, so Marty Stoked on Mastodon said, in no particular order, do a power bomb, and that's going to come up again, I think. Rogue Sun, which I only know the title. I don't remember what that one's about. 8 Billion Genies, which I am so looking forward to reading when that comes out in a collection. Radiant Black, which is, I've talked about that before. I think that may have actually been one of my favorites of last year. And then finally he says Grimm. And again, that's a book I'm not all that familiar with. And so part of the reason I asked for these is to introduce not only myself, but maybe to you, to some books that you may have passed up or initially thought, nah, I don't, that doesn't interest me, like Do a Power Bomb. was for me because I saw that solicited, and it was something about wrestling. I'm like, I'm not into wrestling. I don't care about wrestling. Why would I want to read a wrestling comic? But it has shown up, or I've seen people talking about it on social media so many times. It's like, I have to read this now because so many people whose opinions I value or respect in some way are putting that book on their top list for 2022. So there you go. All right, let's continue with the DC Comics, my favorite DC Comics. And this next one should be no surprise to those of you who know me. And that is, of course, Nightwing. And I read issues 81 through 98 in 2022. 2022. I've also talked about Nightwing in 3 of the Pull List reviews from March, May, and August. Those are episodes 217, 220, and 229. So Nightwing 78 was in my top 5 last year, which I think it was number 1. And this year, it should be no surprise that Nightwing is in my favorites list as well. I will admit the Fear State tie-in issues that I read weren't my favorite of the run, but everything else has been, just top notch for my favorite superhero character. Redondo's playfulness on the page, like issue 87, was one long continuous image. The striking covers, especially in the latter 90s that I have. This book is just such a delight for me for this character, about this character. And writer Taylor just seems to know somehow what I need with this character and his supporting cast, because that's one of the wonderful things about this. Not only do you have Batgirl and them together and exploring that relationship in a newish way that I've not seen before. The Flash showed up for a couple. We've seen the Titans, Batman, Superman, John Kent, Superman, Nightwing mentoring him. Superman actually showed up. That may have been in previous issues before the ones that I read in 2020. Anyway, it's just been a delight in that way. Speaking of all these people, the relationships that Dick has with the larger DCU is highlighted in the series. Like I said, he's now the benefactor of Bloodhaven instead of Bruce has always been the benefactor of Gotham, but now that has shifted to Dick Grayson. Bruce is, I guess he's broke. I don't know. I don't read the Bat books except for this one. I already talked about the familiar and fresh relationship with Babs. In fact, there's at one point, I forget the issue now. Dick is telling her that she has to go. She has to get away from him because it's too dangerous for her to be around him. And she just laughs. And there's 2 panels of this, and it's a meme just waiting to happen. She laughs out loud and then looks at him and says, "F that." And I thought, oh my God, this is exactly what I needed to see between these two. And, Dick just, sometimes he gets so wrapped up in his own head that he cannot see what's right in front of him, and which is this wonderful relationship, partnership that just makes him a better and stronger person. And so I just freaking love this book. Let's see here. Oh, and then in issue 98, which is that the last one? Yeah, that's the last one of 2022. Which is, I said 78 was my top pick of last year. I think 98 of Nightwing is my top of these issues, because Nightwing meets his greatest fan, Nightmite. That issue especially filled me with such joy that at one point when I was reading it, I involuntarily squealed in delight. And this was after Nightmite magically. So Nightmite is a fifth dimensional imp like Batmite for Batman. At one point, I think Batman even says to Nightwing, "Oh, you've developed a fifth dimensional imp," or something like that. Anyway, I love it. Anyway, Nightmite magically empowers dog Haley, and she and Dick have a moment together because Haley's now in a cape and a mask, and she can talk. And Haley says, "Thank you, feed me, save me." Nightwing says back, "Thank you, You're a very good dog. And Haley responds, good human. And that's when I was just like, oh, so good. Wonderfully depicted. That issue was drawn by fill in artist Danielle Nicolo? Nicolo? Anyway, this has been the best Nightwing since Wolfman and Perez. Oh my God, so good. So good. The next DC comic that I have on my list is a single issue, but I talked about this before. This is Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, number 4. This was actually not initially on my list, but as I was looking through all of the contenders, it just kept coming back to me. Again, it was the criteria that I talked about before. It's like what keeps coming back to me? What had an impact? And this one did. I did talk about this in episode 220, which was the April Poll List review. There's a scene in this where Supergirl is demanding this really large alien to hit her, to get that alien to grieve, and that sequence made me cry. It brought tears to my eyes every time I read it. Later in the issue, when Supergirl has seen enough of the atrocities she discovers across the various worlds, she flies into a sun and super screams so as not to break anything in that last now dead world. And that frustration, that anger, that hit home for me for, a few reasons. But that was just wonderfully done, depicted by Bilquis Evely and Tom King. Just wonderful, wonderful issue. The final issue in the DC lineup here is also a single issue because I haven't read any more of this, but man, what an impact this had. This is Wonder Woman Historia number 1, which I did talk about in the episode 227, the Poll List review for June. As I said in that episode, it's the most beautiful comic book I have ever read. And given some of the other entrants in this favorites list, that's saying something. Out of all the books on this list, this one is here in large part because of how good the Phil Jimenez art is. And that's, I can't even, I don't think I adequately described how good I think the art is in that previous episode, and I don't think I can do it now. It's just, and I don't know that I can partly because I didn't buy the issue. I read it on my iPad via the DCU app, and I cannot find that issue cheaply enough. It's being sold aftermarket for way too high a price for me. But man, I will be forever kicking myself for not picking that up. I actually did have an opportunity to pick up a later printing that did not feature Phil Jimenez's cover for it, and now I can't get that one now either. Not for a affordable price. I'm waiting for the trade. I will get whatever collection that contains this issue, and of course I want to read the rest of Wonder Woman Historia. All right, before I move on to the next publisher selection of books, I want to read a couple more top fives or top tens, whichever ones they are. Top from social media. This is from Donald Rex Jr. on Mastodon again. Donald said, hard to limit it to 5 favorites, but I'd pick A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. So there's that again, Human Target. Santos Sisters, which that is not something I'm familiar with. Shaolin Cowboy, Cruel to Be Kin. Which Shaolin Cowboy is something that I have been seeing through various social media posts for people that I follow. And it's not something that I had picked up. And I actually have ordered the first volume of that. And Starhenge is the rounds up his top 5. He also gives some contenders: Dwellings, which I'm not familiar with, The Silver Coin, Dirtbag Rapture, and Invisible Red Sonja. Now, he has some asterisks for these last two. It says mostly 2021 titles, but ended in 2022. You know what, Donald? My rules are if you read it in 2022, it counts. So All right. And then I also have some feedback from Sleepy Reader, Damien, who also lists Shaolin Cowboy as part of his top 5. Ice Cream Man, which is an excellent pick. I really need to get caught up on that. A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance. So there you go. There's another one. Norse Mythology Volume 3. And Usagi Yojimbo, which, as I'm recording this, last night, I started with Volume 1 of Usagi Yojimbo. So there you go. All right, let's move on to my Marvel picks. Since, like I said, I have it in this order for some reason. I'm just going to go with it. All right, and there's just a few. A couple, actually. First up is Defenders, There Are No Rules, which was the first miniseries, issues 1 through 5. I talked about, I guess, a couple of these issues in episodes 210 and 225, pull list reviews for January and May. Because in that first episode, I had read issue 1 digitally on Marvel Unlimited. And as soon as I read that, I knew I had to get the trade collection, and I waited for that to come out and then read the rest of the issues. All I have to say about this, so much fun, especially for the Rodriguez art. This series delved into Marvel cosmology and explores the universe or universes, cosmoses. Explores the superhero archetypes mixed with an homaging Kirby bombastic storytelling and designs. Rodriguez is just knocking out of the park. And I cannot wait to read the next Defenders series. Hopefully that comes out. The collection comes out soon so I can read that too. I'm sure that will be also on my favorites of 2023 list. We'll see. All right. And then next is, this was actually going to be part of my pull list review for September 2022, but I'm not doing that. I decided to fold in some of these books that I was going to do pull list review commentary on into this favorites episode. And this book that I'm talking about is Fantastic Four Full Circle that I read back in September. This is by Alex Ross, Josh Johnson, and Ariana Maher, or Mar. So when I first saw this, and I talked about it in one of the Spotlight Previews episodes, I saw this being solicited by Abrams Comic Arts, but it was Alex Ross doing Fantastic Four. And not only that, he wrote it and drew it. So, he's not just doing covers in this. So I had to get it. So I'll just read the description on the back of the book here. It's a rainy night in Manhattan and not a creature is stirring, except for Ben Grimm. When an intruder suddenly appears inside the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Four find themselves surrounded by a swarm of invading parasites. These carrion creatures composed of negative energy come to Earth using a human host as a delivery system. But for what purpose? And who is behind this untimely invasion? The Fantastic Four have no choice but to journey into the negative zone, an alien universe composed entirely of antimatter, risking not just their own lives, but the fate of the cosmos. All right. So this is a sequel of sorts to Fantastic Four number 51, This Man, This Monster, which when I read Full Circle, I had not read issue 51 of Fantastic Four. But as I record this, I read it like 2 nights ago because I wanted to see the connections, beyond what I read about. And I read a summary. I knew the beats, but I didn't know the details. Right. However, I don't think you need to know. I don't think you need to have read that issue to appreciate this particular book. Anyway, aside from some of the art and getting, the background for a particular character here, I don't know that you need to read it, actually. I think you get enough, like I said. Anyway, this book is beautiful, and not just for the Alex Ross and Josh Johnson art. The dust jacket itself for the book is functional beyond just providing cover art and back of the book blurbs. It gives us the Fantastic Four's origin in a couple fold outs, which I love, so as not to waste precious interior pages on stuff like that, which is normally what you would get for a book like this, just in case someone picks this up in a bookstore and kind of knows the Fantastic Four, but maybe don't know the details. So I appreciate that quite a bit. I think Ross and Johnson evoke Kirby's Fantastic Four, not just in how the characters look, but also like the background designs and whatnot. There's 2 pages, when the FF enter the negative zone. It's very reminiscent of, I think, what I think of as a well-known page from Fantastic Four 51 of Reed floating in the negative zone, and you see all those planets in the background. It's, Kirby was... I'm not entirely sure of this, but I'm pretty sure that he's using photographic imagery and overlaying it with the comic art. He was doing a little bit of that. I don't know if that's exactly what he did with that Fantastic Four issue, that page from that book, but it looks like it to me. Anyway, besides the kind of like the line art of it. The most impressive thing about this book is are the colors. Besides the bright yellows and oranges that you see throughout, various scenes were colored in ways that you don't normally see in comic books, with lighter blues and greens and pinks. Lots of pink in this. All the colors then intensify when they go into the negative zone, which I thought that was a great way to visually differentiate the 2 universes without what's the not mirror image when you get the opposite colors, I forget, like a negative image, duh. So I really appreciate the way that they constructed that look of the negative zone. So they like it says, they go into the negative zone and they have this adventure and they encounter someone from the Fantastic Four 51 issue, and a bunch of stuff happens. Anyway, I'm not going to spoil it because you should go read it. But I want to say, I want to highlight this. What I really liked about, one aspect I really liked about this book was the focus on Sue and her leadership, her abilities. Once that first attack that happens, that is mentioned in the blurb, Reed's talking about needing to go into the negative zone, but it is Sue who walks into the room already having put on her uniform and having called the sitter to come over. And Reed's like, "Are you sure about this?" And she says to Reed, darling, they invaded our home where our children live. Let's not waste any more time in bringing the fight to them." Which I just love Sue Storm. In fact, it's Sue who saves their bacon more than once with her force fields, with her invisibility. If it wasn't for her in particular, things would have gone very differently in the negative zone for the FF. So reaffirming my belief that Sue Storm is the most powerful and best member of the FF. Fight me on that. All right, a couple more top 10 or top comics. I should stop saying top 10. Some top comics from folks on social media. The first one here is from Solitaire Rose. He offers That Texas Blood, Hell is a Squared Circle, Stillwater, which I read, Simpsons Treehouse of Horror Omnibus. That was a surprising one for me, actually. And then Reckless, he chose 2, Follow Me Down and The Ghost in You. And I might be talking about Reckless a little bit later. Anyway, That Texas Blood is also one of those books like Do a Powerbomb and Shaolin Cowboy, where I've noticed people talking about it, and I read that first volume and did not like it. So I may have to revisit those later volumes to see, did I miss something? What wasn't clicking about it for me? That everybody else that have mentioned it is seeing in this book. So anyway, so that's another reason why, like I said, I already said this, but that's a reason why I like to solicit this feedback, because it makes me consider books that I either didn't read or gave up on, like this one. So there you go. And then let's see here, from Twitter, I have Mike. Hey, Mike. He says, in no particular order, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, Public Domain, which I've not read yet, Human Target, again, here we go. Batman, Superman, World's Finest, yes. Mike and I seem to have similar tastes in books. The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, and Timeless, which he says technically released late December 21, so may not count. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does, Mike. It all counts. Just like the DC universe right now. Timeless, isn't that's the Kang-centric one-shot that they came out with? I read that. If that's what it is, I read that. Okay. All right, thanks, Mike, and everybody else so far. Speaking of the Many Deaths of Layla Starr, that is the first book here. Oh, I didn't put... That's interesting. I did not put... So I put the DC and Marvel books in alphabetical order, but I did not put... I did not put the Image books necessarily in alphabetical order. Anyway, the first book on my list for Image is The Many Deaths of Layla Starr. Issues 1 through 5. I talked about this book in the February 2022 Pull List Review, episode 213. And, I love this book. It came out, I think, in late 2021, but I read it in 2022. I think in that episode, I even said if I had read this before, it would have made my top 5 of 2021. But here it is. And it's been a year later, and I still think about this book. And if you've not read it, I highly encourage you to do so. It's about a god of death who loses her station, becomes mortal, so to speak, and wants to kill the guy. And the reason she loses her station is that a human has invented immortality, and she tries to kill him. Except that's not really what the book is about, and that was the delight and surprise of it. And it's about so much more, and it's such a good book. In fact, I talking about it now, all I want to do is go reread it. So, and you should go read it too. All right, next up is a book whose second volume I have read just recently, but this is Friday. Volume 1, it's a small book. It originally came out, it was printed by Image, but originally released digitally by Panel Syndicate. This is Marcos Martin and Ed Brubaker. So it collects the first 3 issues, which I wish we would get more because it's so good. It's so good. Again, almost a year later, I read this. I'm still excited about the character and the story. It's like Encyclopedia Brown meets Sherlock Holmes, and with Friday being the Watson, and but coming back at it, many years later, the characters having grown older, and certain things have happened. There's supernatural elements to it. It's just so much stuff, and it works so well. And I cannot wait for more. This is one of those things where I have contemplated doing this, and I decided not to, but I think I might just go do this anyway, and just buy the individual issues digitally from Panel Syndicate, and then of course get the the collection later. So good, very, very good book. So anyway. And finally, out of Image, I chose a single issue, Saga number 60. Let's see here. I did talk about Saga in a couple episodes, but not issue number 60, I think. No, I did. I talked about issue 58 and in the May Pull List Review, episode 225, and then episode 228 for the July Pull List Review, I talked about 60. And basically, I chose this because every time I read that sequence with Hazel calling for her daddy as their home burns in front of her, it made me cry. It's so heartbreaking, among many heartbreaks of that series. I have read a few posts on social media from people I follow, basically saying that the magic is gone from that book, and I don't agree. I don't see it. So I think it's just as good as it ever has been, And that issue in particular was so emotionally impactful that I had to include it on this list. Okay, so those are my top books. My top 10, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are my top 10 favorite books of 2022. However, I have a few more things to pass along. I have a couple more. The final 2 bits of feedback from, let's see, the first one's from Doug. Doug on Twitter, who offered Manifest Destiny, Wind Thrown in the Sky, and the wind is spelled W-Y-N-D, and so Wind Thrown in the Sky. I've never heard of that one. Twig, which I have heard of, Nightwing, and Nice House on the Lake. So some good books there, even if I don't know a couple of them personally. And then finally, I have from Dance Along the Edge on Mastodon. This person listed Catwoman, Lonely City, which I've only heard good things, and I can't wait to read that. Philadelphia, which I know is a favorite of Peter Rios's, and I've read a couple of volumes so far. Once a Future, which is a good book. I need to get back to that. Lazarus Risen. Hey, Dance, I really like that. I appreciate someone else liking Lazarus. And Superman Space Age, which I am really looking forward to reading that when it comes out digitally. I think the hardcover collection has been solicited, but I didn't order it. I think I'm waiting for the trade, paperback. Anyway. Dance Along the Edge also offered honorable mention, to Christopher Priest's various Vampirella-related titles at Dynamite, and the manga, I hope I say this right, Gigant? Sorry. Both crazy in their own special way. So, all right. That is all of the responses that I got on social media for the people's top favorite comics of 2022. Thank you one and all for doing that. I really appreciated the fact that I got a lot of responses from Mastodon over other social media. So like I said before, join me on Mastodon so we can chat comics. However, we're not done yet. Speaking of honorable mentions, I have a few that I wanted to go through. The first up here is Always Never from Dark Horse, which I read in September. This is another one of those books that I was going to include in a Polarist review, but that I did not because I'm doing it right now. Anyway, this book, once I read the solicitation, I had to get it. This is by Jordi. Okay, this is French, so bear with me. Jordi Lefebvre, Clemence Sapine. Let's see, and Chromatic Limited, with English translation by Montana Kane, which, by the way, sounds like an awesome comic book character name if I've ever heard one. All right, so I'm always on the lookout for interesting, different books, and when I saw this one in previews and read how the story was going to be told in reverse chronological order, and it's a love story between this couple, I had to get it. I knew once I got the book and I flipped through it just briefly, which I always do for all the new books. I just kind of, sometimes I'll flip through them and actually start reading them before I'm ready to actually sit down and read them. But I knew I needed to read it as soon as possible. And for the first time ever, I asked my wife if we could read it together. And so over the course of a week, maybe it was a couple weeks, we would just get in bed and I would read a chapter or two a night. And so there's 20 chapters in all, I think. So yeah, it was over the course of a couple weeks. Although we did because we were leaving to go on a trip. I think I read like 3 or 4 chapters in one night so that we could have it done before we left. Anyway, the short of it is I love this book. My wife, maybe not as much. But that had to do more with the characters' choices in the story rather than a reflection of the work itself, because she said she enjoyed it. On the back of the book, usually you have what the book is about and maybe some quotes and whatnot. That doesn't have this. It's a very lovely background, there's birds flying, and we see the clouds in the sky, and it says, "Now that I've found you again, I would so love to make a little bit of space for you in my life, a place filled with seagulls with a view of the sea." And so that's really all the summary you need for this, right? I will say that while I really enjoyed this, I love the characters. I'm not really sure that telling this in reverse chronological order, I'm not sure what the contribution really is to the overall story. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to have gotten out of the story because it's told in this way, other than bringing up questions that in many ways get answered because you read what informed what in the past, what happened in the more recent time, but not all questions are answered. And I think that was probably the major frustration point that my wife had. But if you're looking for a wonderful little love story with wonderful art, you should check this out. And it's a good book. It's really interesting characters, like I said, and it's wonderful. So, all right, next up is Echolands by J.H. Williams III, W. Hayden Blackman, Dave Stewart, and Todd Klein. I read the first issue. Yeah, I got the book. I got the collection. I read the first issue in September, and then I didn't get back to it for a while, and then finally read the rest of it in November. I love the page design and coloring. I'm not so enamored with the landscape format of the book, quite honestly, and the overall story. But what Williams III and company have created is a rich tapestry and pastiche of many cartooning types and art styles, which that's just really cool. A lot of what I enjoyed about this was the page layouts. And, part of that is partly due to the landscape nature of it, and how objects on the page would use or even become the panel borders, and especially not just like, rectangular designs, but these wavy, curvy designs of things. Someone's cape, as it flowed across the page, then became the panel border and, drew your eye to the next scene. So things like that. It's just really creatively done. Let's see. I think Dave Stewart must have been having a ball with the coloring, or maybe pulling his hair out, because there was so much stuff to color. And because this is a world full of different fantastical genres, the palette is vast, including black and white. And I will definitely be getting volume 2, if there is one. I've not heard anything one way or the other, but it was definitely an interesting read for sure. I have is this the only one? Yeah, it's the only other Marvel book on my list, Iron Man, which I read issues 2 through 23 last year. I read 12 of those issues in April because once I started it, because this is written by Christopher Cantwell, with various artists, including I think is it Kefu? Anyway, I started reading it, and I couldn't put it down. It was just like I had to read and read and read and read. It was just that good. Iron Man, I talked about Iron Man in the March and April Pull List Reviews, episodes 217 and 220. It was a consistently entertaining story, though I have to admit I enjoyed the Korvac storyline the most, and the Iron God issues that came after that. The next story that I'm currently reading in the latter issues, it's okay. It's fine. But if that whole Korvac Iron God stuff was just wonderfully done. All right. Next up is Love Everlasting 1 through 4. So there you go, Mr. Englishman in San Diego. I did talk about this book, this series, in 3 different Pull List Review episodes. I talked about in March, June, and July Pull List Reviews 217, 227, and 228, which I assume were the first 3 issues, and I never got to the 4th. Anyway, I have been a fan of Elsa Chartier's work since 2015's The Infinite Loop miniseries. It doesn't hurt that Tom King is writing this. And while I have quite enjoyed this playful approach, this playing around with the romance comic tropes in this title, there's a sci-fi aspect to it. I think there's something going on that's not just like a romance genre thing. This probably missed being in my top 10 list because I haven't read issue 5. Why should that matter? Because I think 5 was the end of the first arc. I think I was getting frustrated with it's only 4 issues too, so I'm not sure what my issue was with this book. It's beautifully drawn. I love that. But I think the repetitiveness of here's the romance de jour, if you will, and then the main character's realization, oh, I'm in this scene. I'm experiencing these situational love stories, and I have to get out of here, or something happens. Anyway, it felt a bit repetitive, and so I wasn't feeling like it was moving forward enough, I guess, in the first 4 issues. And then for some reason, so Everlasting Productions, which is the Substack that Chartier and King co-own, or I guess, they were releasing these digitally for free. And so that's how I read the first 4 issues. But for some reason, they never released issue 5. And so I've ordered the trade so I can. I want to support them because I like that I really like how we're getting a comic book that's not superhero, it's not horror, which seem to be the 2 main genres these days. It's something different and beautifully drawn, like I said. So I'm looking forward to reading that first arc and then seeing where they go next with this. All right. A few people in the social media responses listed Nice House on the Lake, and that book is on here as well. I read the first 9 issues. I talked about this in the January Pull List Review, episode 210. I only talked about the first 2 issues, though, but this book was a surprise. Maybe I'm repeating myself with this, but I wasn't excited about it because it was written by James Tynion IV. His work is okay, has been okay, but with work like this and Department of Truth, which I'm also reading in trades, I'm coming around to his how good he is. So sometimes I'm a late bloomer, realizing these things. Artists Bueno and Belair really sell these people in Nice House on the Lake and the setting, both the mundanity of the house near the lake and just the sci-fi elements of the black building and the sculptures or whatever they are. Anyway, it's just I'm really looking forward to reading the next 3 issues of this. I think is it 12 issues or is it just 10? I think it's 12. Anyway, to see how it ends. And I think there's supposed to be more after that too, but don't quote me on that. All right. Next here is 2 Parker books by Darwyn Cooke, 2 adaptations he did of the Parker books. This is The Score and Slayground. I talked about Score in the April Pull List Review, episode 220, and then I was supposed to talk about Slayground in the September one, but here we go. I have now read all of Cooke's Parker adaptations, and boy, does that sting, because there's no more. And these graphic novels are so good. Darwyn Cooke is a freaking genius and so versatile. You probably know Darwyn Cooke mostly from, DC's New Frontier. And then I'm going to talk about something else here in a minute that he did that I absolutely adored. There's a bunch of things that Darwyn Cooke has done, but I'm afraid that most people may not realize or have given his Parker books a chance because they're dark, they're brutal, but they're beautiful. It's just such good stuff. I will say I like Slayground probably just a little bit more than the score, probably because it had a bit more action to it. But anyway, do yourself a favor and check all of them out. I think there are 4 of those, I want to say. Anyway, good stuff. Someone mentioned Reckless before. I have read Friend of the Devil, Destroy All Monsters, and The Ghost in You. I talked about, I forget now which ones, in the March Pull List Review, episode 217. I did read the first 3 of those books, because there are 4. I think The Ghost in You is the 4th one. Anyway, I don't remember. Oh, no. Yeah, the first 4. Reckless, and then Reckless, Friend of the Devil, Reckless, Destroy All Monsters, Reckless, The Ghost in You. Anyway, I read the first 3 in 1 month because when I finished Volume 1, I had to pick up Volume 2 and then Volume 3. I could not put them down. They were so good. Solid characters and storytelling from Phillips and Brubaker. I'm happy to get a new book every quarter. I'm wondering. Given what they've proven, because apparently sales have been great for these books, is this the new comic book publishing paradigm? And this is also something that some other comic book related news podcasts / websites have thrown out there as well. Is this going to be the wave of is this the wave of the future for comic book publishing? Yes, but I'm curious. Do you like getting somewhat serialized fiction 3 or 4 times a year as opposed to once a month, or once a month for a few months and then a long break? And I'm looking at you, Lazarus. Although, Lazarus tried doing something like this, but a little differently. It wasn't a, putting this in quotes, a graphic novel length book, but it was providing story and then world building articles and backstory and stuff like that as well. So, but I think Reckless may have beat Rucka and Company in that game. So, but we shall see. All right, second to last, the penultimate honorable mention here. I actually had this in my top 10, but then rethought it. This is Robin and Batman. I got the hardcover. I read it in September. This collects the 3-issue miniseries by Dustin Nguyen, Jeff Lemire, and Steve Wands. I think most people know, especially since I talked about it a little bit already, more towards the beginning of the show, how much of a Robin / Dick Grayson fan I am. So when I saw DC soliciting this 3-issue miniseries, Robin and Batman, with the names inverted, instead of the normal way, the Batman and, I knew I had to get this because, I knew just from the title that it was going to focus on Robin. I was also curious how I would react to Nguyen's kind of sketchy watercolor style when not part of his Little Gotham stylized characters, which I do enjoy. But what is this book about? Besides being, focused on Robin. So the back of the book here says, "What's that kid doing there? Dick Grayson, the world's first sidekick Robin, is just starting out with Batman, struggling to find his own path from personal tragedy to being a superhero. Take an intimate look at the earliest growing pains of one of the legends of Gotham City in this gorgeous hardcover collected edition," or whatever way you're reading this. So there's that. Like I said, so this is basically an updated origin story, but with Robin having a lot more agency. He's the star of the story, so it makes a lot more sense than we've ever been shown before. I especially like the scenes with the Teen Titans, even if, and spoiler here if you've not read it, spoiler here. Initially, Robin was doing recon on the other sidekicks for Batman, which that created a whole other problem in the story, which I loved, especially with Alfred. I really enjoy this. Like I said, fleshing out Dick Grayson's story, giving him more of a spotlight, making him the hero of the story, along with the Teen Titans appearance. I would love to see a sequel starring the Teen Titans with Robin, of course, with Nguyen drawing. So there you go. All right, finally, here we go. This will be a long episode. All right. I mentioned Darwin Cook before, and on the last book on my honorable mentions list is the solo hardcover that I read last year, which I talked about in episode 225, the pull list review for May. There are 3 highlights to this, and the reason I mentioned Darwin Cook is because the entire Darwin Cook issue was worth the price of admission for that hardcover collection. And that hardcover came out years ago. But and I've had it for years. I just hadn't read it. The same goes for the Michael Allred issue. By the way, speaking of Allred, I just read his and Dan Slott's Silver Surfer run and just adored it. Anyway, so the Michael Allred stuff, especially his the 2 stories featuring the Doom Patrol versus Teen Titans and Batman A Go-Go. That was issue number 7 of that series. Oh, and the Darwin Cook issue was number 5. And then pretty much everything in the Sergio Aragonés issue, number 11. I talked about all this stuff in that particular episode before, the autobiographical and historical vignettes. So that good stuff. If you've not read the solo stories, I believe they're on the DCU app. I'm pretty sure you can still get the hardcover. I don't know. I have no idea. I shouldn't say things like that because I have no idea. Okay. That's my favorites of 2022 episode. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're looking forward, like I am, to what I plan on doing starting this year. And, catch me on social media. Like I said, on Mastodon. I'm still on Twitter, but I'm finding myself engaging there less and less. Hive even less. I thought that was going to be the big Twitter replacement, but man, that place is almost practically dead. But I still check it. And, you can always send me email, communicate with me that way by sending email to longboxreview@gmail.com. Leave comments at the website, longboxreview.com as well, where this will be posted. And I look forward to hearing from you, conversing with you in the various ways. And, we shall see what the future holds for this podcast. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting the show. Thanks for recommending the show and all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. All right. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.